Hello, everybody. How are you, children? I hope all of you are doing good, right? So today we'll start a new lesson, which is sorting materials into groups. I'm sure you have heard the word material and groups. In school, you have different groups, right? You have this orange group, you have this blue group, right? And also you have seen many materials and you have heard the word material. But what does sorting mean? Sorting means classifying these materials into different groups. Right, children? So in this lesson, we are going to learn what are objects, what are materials, and how these objects are divided into different groups based on their materials. To understand this, we first need to understand what are the objects that we see around us or what is around us. Look at the room that you are sitting. What is that you see? You see a table, you see a chair, you have the books in front of you, you have the fan, you have the light, you have the door, you have these windows, the fan. So these are different objects that you see. So the objects are those things that you can see, you can feel, and you can touch them. Right, children? Now, what are materials? Object is different from materials. For example, here in my hand, you see this chalk piece. This is an object. Then look at this board. We have the green board here, and then you have this steel metal that is covering or holding this board. So this board is made up of two materials. So materials are those things which are combined to make an object. An object is a whole. Example is your chalk piece. It is made up of one material. So this is an object with one material. But this object, which is your board, it has two different materials. It has the board and it has this steel plate holding it. Right, children? I hope you understood what are objects. Objects are those you can see, you can feel, you can touch them. In this classroom, I have the board, I have the chalk piece, I have the door, I have the light, I have the fan. In your room, you have different objects that you see, but look at those objects carefully. You can see it is made up of different materials. For example, the pen that you are writing or the pencil that you are writing, the pencil, it has the wood, it has the lead, and it has the rubber backside. So it is made up of three different materials. The pen that you are writing, it has the plastic body for it, and there is a refill inside. So it is made up of two materials. Object is the whole that we are talking about. Materials are those different things that is used to make an object. I hope this is clear to you, children. Right. The next thing that we need to talk about is the properties of materials. Why do you think the properties of material is important in dividing them into groups? Before that, now let's talk some example of these objects. Okay. For an example, let us take a chair. You see a plastic chair. The chair is made up of plastic, a single material. Now with plastic, which is the material, you can make many other things like a plastic spoon, plastic glass, plastic tiffin box. So the material can be used to make many things. For example, let's take cotton. From cotton, you have your clothes, you have the pillow, you have the bed sheet, you have the towel, right? So with a material, we can make varieties of things. So it becomes important which material we need to use to make those objects. Right, children? We need to understand which material, what objects can be made. For example, now if you are supposed to make, after you make coffee, and you need a mug to pour the coffee or a glass to pour the coffee. Instead of a glass, which is made up of plastic or steel or any other material, if you use cloth, what do you think will happen? Do you think the coffee will stay in the cloth? No, it will come out of the cloth. So here, the property of the cloth and the property of a plastic, it is different. Depending on the property is the characteristic of a material. So depending on the characteristic of a material, the products are made. Right, children? Okay. Now let us understand what are the properties of a material. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 properties of a material by which they are classified into different groups. Which are they? They are the appearance, hardness, soluble or insoluble, float or sink, transparency. So we have appearance, hardness, soluble or insoluble, float or sink, transparency. Let's understand each one of them. Appearance. What do you mean by appearance? For example, take this chalk-piece. How do you think it looks like? Is this chalk-piece shining? Here I have written shine. The other word for shine is lustrous. Is this chalk-piece shining, children? No, right? Example, let's take gold. Look at the gold bangle or the gold earring. They shine, right? So those things that shine, like the gold, it is called the lustrous. And those things, they don't shine, which is dull, like the chalk-piece, they are called as the non-lustrous. So the material are classified into shining material and dull material. Your wood, then the paper, the sponge, these are non-lustrous objects. Silver, gold, these are lustrous because they have that shiny thing on their covering. So they are called the lustrous and non-lustrous. The next thing is the hardness. How do you think the chalk-piece is? Is this hard? It is hard, right? Let's take the sponge, which is soft. Take your ball, the sponge ball, that is soft. Take the cloth, they are soft. But whereas this board, do you think they are soft? No. So the material is divided into soft and hard. Soft are those material which we can crush them. Hard are those which you can't crush them. Right? For example, it's the sponge which we can't crush. And let's take the dough. Can you crush the dough? The spoon that you eat, can you crush them? They are solid materials. So a material or an object is classified based on the hardness of that material. Then we have soluble or insoluble. What does that mean? Soluble means those materials, objects that will dissolve in the water, which will completely dissolve in the water. Example is sugar, salt. and your glucose, you put them into the water and you mix them, you stir them, they get dissolved. Whereas you take a plastic spoon, you take a steel spoon, you take an iron nail, put them inside water and try to dissolve them. Do they dissolve? They don't dissolve. So things that will get mixed into the water completely, they are called dissolved or soluble, and those they do not mix in the water, they are called the insoluble. Right, children? So I hope you understood what is soluble and insoluble. The next property is float or sink. Float means, let's take water and then you put a paper on it. What do you think will happen? The paper will float on the water. Then, if I take this chalk piece and put it on inside the put it on the water, what will happen? Sorry, it will sink. So, the next property of a material is it either floats or it sinks. Because of the why do you think it will float or why do you think it will sink? Sorry, it floats depending on the thickness of the material. If the material is lightweight, it will float. If the material is dense, thick, like the chalk piece or a spoon, a steel spoon, they will sink, or a stone, they will all sink. That is because of the property of their weight. Those things they are less weight will float on the water, and those things which are more weight, they will sink, or yes, they will sink. Right, children? I hope float or sink. This property is understood. Then comes the transparency. What do you mean by transparency? Now, transparency is the object by which the light passes or not. If you're able to see certain things through the object, that will decide the transparency of an object. Based on this property, they are further classified into transparent, translucent, and opaque. Let's study one by one. What do you mean by transparent? Transparent are those objects by which the light will clearly pass. For example, your window. You can see through your window, right? The light passes very clearly in these objects. Translucent are those objects by which the light travels partially. What are the examples? For example, you can take a paper, apply a bit of oil to it, and then hold it towards the light. You can see partial light passing through it, and you will see a blur kind of picture opposite of the paper. So those are your translucent, in which the light partially passes. Then we have the opaque object, in which the light cannot pass through or will not pass through. For example, if I keep a book in front of me, will you be able to see my face? No. Or let us take a wooden box, and you keep that in front of you. Can you see what is happening on the other side? No, because the light is not passing through these objects. So they are called the opaque object. Transparent, the light passes completely. Translucent, the light passes partially. In opaque, the light doesn't pass at all. So these are the properties of a material, which are appearance, hardness, soluble or insoluble, float or sink, transparency. Depending on these properties, an object is made. Right, children? So in this class, we understood what are objects, what are materials, how an object is made depending on the properties listed here, right? And why do you think the objects have to be classified into these? Because as mentioned before, I said with glass you cannot hold the coffee or the water. They will flow because it's not hard, right? So things that has to be made, for that we need to look at its property. Can cloth be used for making utensils, or the hard substance can they be used to make soft things like a doll? By wood, can you make a doll? We can't. So the property of a material will decide what object it can be made up of. Thus, it becomes important to know the property of an object. Right, children? I hope you understood the points we discussed in the class. Please go through your textbook. You will understand it better. I will meet you in the next class with a new chapter. Take care, children. Bye till then.